And hello, everybody. Welcome to the Gamification Revolution. I'm your host, Gabe Zichermann. It is a cloudy day in New York City, very humid, but I'm glad to be inside. I'm so glad that you guys are with us today, once again, here, where we're going to talk about gamification and engagement. I want to start off at the top of the show by welcoming all of you. If you happen to be here live with us in person, make sure that you log in and then you'll have the option of asking a question. You can click on one of the buttons that says submit question or camera that's somewhere around the screen and ask your question live and online. If you've got a camera, I'll actually bring you on board so that you can ask your questions live and in person. And today's a great time to do that. And for those of you who are listening to the podcast or watching the post-recorded video, thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in live Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern, so that you can be with us live at the show and join the startling and scintillating conversation that's happening on the side. I also want to let you all know that Gamification Summit Global, G Summit Global, is almost underway. It starts in just a little over a month. I'm traveling around the world doing workshops, live meetups, and we've got a great online and live and pre-recorded curriculum filled with really exciting new experts from all around the world that you can hear from, listen to these great new talks, get live Q&A with these top experts from all around the world. And then if you happen to be in one of the 12 or 14 or so cities that I'm going to, I can't even keep track, you can actually come and join me live and do a hands-on live workshop with me somewhere around the world. So check out gsummit.com, take a look at it, join us, register today so that you get one of those spots in the workshop. They're very, very limited. So I want to make sure that you have your chance to get on board and also earn your certification. Now, in the chat already, Michael and Beth, hi guys, are speculating on how it is that I manage to have the time to actually travel around the world and do all of these things and manage my time. And Beth very correctly suggested caffeine. I will tell you something quite personal, which is I love coffee. I know that's not going to come as a huge surprise to anyone, but it used to be a much more hardcore coffee drinker. I would have like maybe 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, and my life was really changed by switching to espresso. Now I drink much fewer coffees a day, just a couple of times. Usually that's enough. A little tired today, so I've had extra coffee. But yes, it's true. I do occasionally use extra coffee stimulants. I'm also a very avid user of to-do applications, and many of you probably are familiar with some of them, like Epic Win, which is gamified personal goal achievement software. I highly recommend using something like that to make sure that you get all the different things that you need done every day. Don't get everything done every day, but I try my best. All right, so today's planned guest was Jeff Atwood, the founder of Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow. Really interesting guy, lots of interesting things to say. We had some technical difficulties bringing Jeff on board. It's possible we may yet get him at some point during the session, but at the same time, I want to start off and talk with you guys a little bit about, I want to start off and do a little bit of a discussion with you guys about some like really super hot topics that I think are very important related to gamification and engagement. And I want to encourage you all to come on and ask your questions. I know that those of you who are watching live, probably have some questions. You're thinking about gamification in your own business, in your own projects, and I want to encourage you to ask me the things that you might need to ask me. This is your time as much as it is the time for anyone. Okay, so one of the most interesting things that I think we're faced with right now, especially when we're thinking about how to gamify, is a question about credibility and accreditation. And so many of you know we have been offering a kind of certification program for a while through a industry association called the Engagement Alliance that we set up. And we've been teaching these courses. We've been teaching live courses that have aimed to try to help kind of create standardized gamification curriculum to help educate and train folks on how gamification actually should be designed. And it's been 3 years of doing that. We've trained hundreds of people in gamified design. Many of you have actually, who are with us today, I'm sure have taken one of those courses with me live and submitted your architecture and have that peer reviewed. And I think that it has been an incredibly good experience. I think it's been really interesting. I've learned a lot. I've also gotten a lot of feedback from our partners and this industry partners, so companies that have actually employed gamification designers, companies looking for that talent and expertise, companies that implement it, technology platforms, vendors that do gamified design. And one of the things that I've heard kind of consistently over and over again from folks is this idea that we need to have a gradated training system for gamification that offers people the opportunity to get certified in that through a formal process, that those formal process tiers have to have actual value attached to them, that they need to be tested or validated at every point, that they need to have meaning, and that they need to have something of value that can be returned. So at a certain and so that a certain level means something. So if you're a level A or a level B or whatever, that actually means something and that has some value. And any of you who've been certified in other things like Microsoft Certified Solutions Engineer or Cisco or something like that, you know that there's something of value that means something at every level. So we actually have kind of been iterating and created something that we think will work as a first assay for gamification designers. And we just announced it earlier this week. I want to kind of call your guys' attention to it if you haven't already seen it. I will get a URL up on the screen for you there where you can take a look at the different certification levels. But the certification levels are designed to actually give you a structured education in gamified design. And there's a lot more work to be done on it, but I actually think that it's a really good first pass. So level 1, which is the basic level of certification, it's kind of the what is gamification, how to know it when you see it, what are these things basically mean, what are the core concepts that we're talking about. So that level 1 certification, you can actually, and at that link that Ivan just put up on the screen, thanks Ivan, it's on gamification.co. You can actually see what each one of these means and see how to actually sign up for a class. The first level of certification is, what is gamification? How does it work? You can take a course on that at Udemy. Now it's pretty cheap and easy. Take it at your own pace online and earn your certification. Level 2 is more sort of in-depth, particularly on game mechanics. What are game mechanics? How do they work? What are the different mechanics? When to use them? How are the mechanics actually used? What are the different structures, meanings, and values? And so that's also a course that you can take on Udemy. It's called Level 2 Certification. And for that, we've actually done something novel. And I know that Dutch, who's with us today, has actually submitted his certification request for that. So one of the things that we did for Level 2 is we have you actually create a kind of idea, gamified solution for a nonprofit of your choosing, and sort of share that with the public as a method of validation and earning your certification. It's less about, is that a good idea? And more just to see that you have a kind of thoughtful process flow that you can apply the things that you've learned in level 2 to help a nonprofit. And we figured it'll help. It'll prompt ideas. We love creating ideas and generating ideas here. And we feel like that's part of our mission is to help nonprofits with good ideas. So I'm excited that Dutch has got one for rideshare. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, sharing that with the world, publicly sharing that with everyone, which is pretty exciting. And then the third level of gamification certification is one that you have to take live with an instructor today. So that's the one that we're offering at G Summit Global. That's the one that is used to be called the advanced level of certification. But basically that one is actually taking what you've learned in levels 1 and 2 and applying them, actually creating a gamification architecture. And for those of you who don't know, we have a sort of structure in gamification called an architecture. It's a document that you create that elaborates how you're going to gamify a business process, a product, a service, or something like that. So in this gamification architecture, you actually, sort of share all that stuff. And the key thing about earning your level 3 certification is that level 3 certification is peer reviewed. It's actually reviewed by folks who are gamification experts. They take a look at it, they give you feedback. That's how you earn that certification. And that's really the one, if you want to think about it, that's the one that really says, hey, this is a person who knows how to spec a gamified system. And that's what level 3 is for. And then level 4, which we're calling sort of the visionary level for gamification, is a level of certification that you've got to have all the other 3. And you have to have actually implemented a gamified solution that's been viewed, that's achieved something, and we're going to be able to get into that. And the main values there are, it demonstrates that you not only have proficiency in the core concept, but you actually are able to, successfully create something of value and you're actually able to train other people. So level 4 certification is not available today. It's something that you can just sort of consume, but hopefully that'll be available by next year. We're going to develop that with other folks, and we'll also be developing other more specialized courseware that will help in specific areas. Like I know that Amy's here with us now, and I know that taking the gamification curriculum and making a specific one for educators, I think would be very interesting. So something that we're looking to do, making a specific certification version for people who are focused on HR issues, potentially for people focused on sustainability. Would love to hear all your feedback about where you think those things need to be applied in order to achieve what it is that we need to achieve. Now, in the meantime, we were talking about G Summit earlier in the event. An interesting idea kind of came up here in the chat now with Dutch and Ivan about having G Summit scholarships. So a way that you can kind of earn your way into G Summit Global or earn your way into a live workshop, which, even though the workshops are attractively priced, they're unfortunately the cost of delivering them is such that they can't be, the same price as an online course. So live workshops, are priced differently. They have a lot of one-on-one interaction. There's a lot of in-depth interaction. We do a lot of stuff together. You get all that time and attention, and afterwards, you actually get the certification reviewed by people who are experts in gamification. So it's an especially valuable interaction and not something that, at the moment we have available as an online project. But I really like the idea of coming up with some kind of campaign that would allow people to come who can't afford it based on some, contribution to the community or something that they're able to achieve. And Beth suggested doing some kind of spec for a gamification application. So I think that's super fun. I think that would really be very exciting. All right, so gamification certification, I encourage you to all check this out. I think it's something that, frankly, there's almost no downside for doing. It's very, very, it's very cost effective to actually take one or more of those courses. You can add those certifications to your LinkedIn. You can add them to your resume. You can talk about them. It's like an official certification. It's the training. It establishes your credibility and expertise of being able to do the foundational things for gamification. Even if you can't join us for a live workshop, I encourage you to take the the level 1 or the level 2 so that you can at least start down that path. And you know what, you guys, you all know this, but gamification is forecast to be a $5.5 billion business, in the next 5 years. How we're going to get to $5.5 billion by employing literally thousands of people. There are going to be thousands and thousands of people employed in gamification in order to be able to do what it is that we need them to do. We've got to have, there are lots of new jobs being created. Not a single week goes by that some major company doesn't ask me, like, hey, do you know somebody who can actually help us apply gamification in our business? There are lots of job opportunities. You see some of those posted online frequently, but I'll tell you, there's lots of opportunities. And no matter what it is that you're doing today, there's probably an opportunity for you to for you to actually use gamification in whatever it is that you do. So I encourage you to make sure that you have a structured and official certification in gamification. Help us make a contribution to the community. Help us define that even more. It's really a good thing. So now we're going to bring Michael Finney on. Hi, Michael.
Hey.
Thanks for being here. So what's your question?
So basically the question is, how can one take a deep dive into consumer or customer facing gamification opportunities as opposed to enterprise? Doing the G Summit workshop with Mario doing the enterprise was awesome. And it's like, okay, well, now it's time to take the deep dive on customer facing opportunities, especially trickling ones, like starting small with existing products and then working your way into the more grand things.
Like doing it with a startup or doing it with a launch product?
Exactly.
Okay, well, great. And by the way, I'm sure that you'll see this afterwards, Michael, but because you've been here a lot, you've been a really engaged member of the show, and I appreciate you being here. Beth is talking about it in chat, how everyone's excited to see what you actually look like, because you always use a sort of drawn up avatar. So it's fun to actually see you live and in person for the folks that are seeing you for the first time. Okay, so one of the interesting things about this is that enterprise gamification and consumer-facing gamification are not actually that different. The bones are very similar. The thing that we're trying to do is very similar. And smart enterprises actually treat their gamification projects like consumer-facing projects. Because it's like, hey, I can't realistically actually force employees to do anything I tell them to do. So even though I'm dealing with a constrained pool, like an employee pool right here, it's actually not that different from trying to convince a group of disconnected consumers to take some action or change their behaviors. So I think they're quite different. Now, I would actually say to you, given that you've already taken Mario's course and so you've done some learning, and I know that you're an avid student of this subject, what I would do is actually I'd look for a startup that's interested in applying gamification, which almost every single one is, and offer to help them. Now, did you mean for your own startup actually, or did you mean for a third party?
Well, so my thoughts go towards the trickling in aspect, actually. Like, for example, here I am consulted regularly on, okay, we have an existing product and we want to put a little bit of engagement in here. These are our business objectives. What do you suggest? Okay, ready, set, go. You got 30 minutes. And it's like, okay, how to trickle this in? Because I understand how to do kind of a bigger scale thing, but not how to do the trickle in.
Got it. So when you have access, okay, so this is interesting, right? Because there's the scenario where you sort of have access um, to think about everything all at once, and you are the grand master designer, right? And then there's the tweak and adjust, which I think is kind of what you're sort of talking about. Okay, so
Exactly.
so here's what I would do, all right? And I think all of this is based on kind of a agile philosophy for using gamification. If you've ever heard me talk about agile, I think there's a lot of connections between the agile philosophy and gamification philosophy, and we try to use agile premises and concepts in almost everything that we do. Okay, so here's what you do. The first thing that I do anytime somebody comes to me and says, hey, how do I gamify this thing? The first thing that I do is I say, okay, let's take a step back. What are we trying to do? And what are the top metrics that are going to be that we're trying to influence in this particular thing? Give me 3 metrics that you actually care about, just for starters. And let's focus in on the one metric that's going to create the most amount of excitement for you. So let's say somebody comes to you, and if you want to share a specific problem, by the way, I can be more tactical. But so basically, it's let's focus in on a specific metric. Let's say that metric is visits to the website metric. So then you say, okay, so let's.
I've actually got one. It's
Go for it. Tell me.
for example, we want to increase registration, logins. We want more logins, that kind of thing.
Okay. And what kind of website is it?
What kind of website is it? It is.
Is it a website or is it a mobile app or?
So hypothetically, let's just say it's the My Carfax website. Where basically we're establishing a long-term relationship with the customer, where they register their cars. They log in, they have an account, they say, here's my car, now show me awesome records about it. History.
Okay, got it. Okay, fine. So, and I think this is probably true for almost every website, but let's just take let's take My Carfax, like what is going on with this car and trying to increase registration. Okay, so first thing that we need to think about is, so what is that metric? We're saying registration. What's in the registration flow today? And what needs to be there and what doesn't need to be there? Now, this is not connected to gamification per se, but it's part of the core discipline, which is about focusing in on the thing that we're actually trying to do. So what's the definition of a registration? Is that getting a name and email address? If that's the minimum requirement for registration, then the first and obvious thing to do is to strip out all the other stuff and focus on getting people to that point. So one of the classic lessons about registration onboarding is that you want to demonstrate some value to users before you actually force them to register. And typically, you want that registration step to actually be something that validates the user's investment in what you've done so far. So as an example would be like, let's say you can type in, I don't know that this is how it works, but let's say that you type in the VIN of a car. I actually don't have a car, I live in Manhattan, so just bear with me. So you type in the vehicle number for a car, and it shows you the first 5 lines of the car's info, right? Not everything that you might want to see, but the first 5 lines of the car's info. And then it's like, hey, we can unlock the rest of this for you register now, and we'll show you the next, 10 lines or whatever it is. So the user registers, and you want that to be as efficient of a flow as possible right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you want to do is you want to unlock that for them and immediately give them some positive reinforcement in the flow, because this is key, right? So another element of gamification: focus on the metrics you want to move, strip away everything that's not essential, offer some value first, then immediately give them some kind of reward. So, hey, it's awesome. You've unlocked the first third of your car report. Now you can check that out. I don't know that this kind of would make sense, but let's say one of the main values is somebody wants to know what the blue book price is for the car. So maybe that's sitting there, and one of the things that you can actually do is you can say something like, if you want to get the blue book value of the car, now you'll need to do something else, like bring a friend, or tell us something else about the car, like who's the seller, whatever the case may be, right? Whatever it is that you need to do. But so I know that doesn't sound like gamification in the kind of in the abstract form. That sounds like I'm just talking about really good kind of onboarding design flow, because I am, and I argue that that's actually core to good gamified design, which is making sure that that onboarding flow maps to the best practice, and that best practice is offer something of value, strip things out, immediately reward, and then immediately give another challenge, which is another mistake that people often make. The very next thing should be another obvious thing for the user to do. Don't let the user kind of wander aimlessly from that point onward, just because they've unlocked one thing. You think I know how to use your system any better now than I did literally 8 seconds ago? Right? So this is also another, this is sort of very common mistake. So I am thinking first about kind of fundamental, shifts in that. One of the main lessons also, and this is unrelated probably to your registration question, but a good lesson to learn, and I gave it to you for the when I was talking about the blue book value. One of the things that Zynga is very good at, and most social game companies are very good at, they're good at making virality a core part of the experience. So virality is not something that's like a refer a friend to get some free stuff. Virality, or inviting someone to join the application, is actually something that's intrinsic to your movement through the experience. So I don't know if in Carfax this makes any sense to you, but I'll just give you a kind of sort of case study that's just an idea off the top of my head. So people want to know, if you want to give people relative values of cars, maybe it's interesting somehow to get your friends' cars to compare them against each other. That's a behavior that people might be interested in. What's my friend's car worth? So you can kind of do that that's a sort of intrinsically viral thing. That's a value.
Or like in the My Carfax product, what we can do is we can show service records, and you're like, oh, hey, how are my service records comparing to my buddy's service records? I mean, hey, look at my car. My car is really well maintained. Hey, how's it going over there, Fred? I mean, whatever. Yeah, I get you.
And so that sounds kind of interesting, like an interesting kind of competition angle that I would certainly want to explore. I'd want to understand that a little bit better, and I'd want to maybe, and I'm just being really stereotypical now, I'd want to maybe offer that option only based on the kind of car that the person is asking about. I think there's probably trigger in there. Certain kinds of cars are not about that, or certain kinds of customers and certain kind of cars together are unlikely to respond to competition, but certain kinds of them together might actually respond well to competition. So there's something in there that that's kind of interesting to me. Or even, you could even imagine a kind of something that was sort of race-like, like how far away you are from the next maintenance milestone in the car. As an example, if you're talking about your own car, and do you, should you get that done sooner rather than later? So you put the person in kind of like a countdown timer mode. Like based on what you said, you're going to hit the 100,000 mile mark in 6 days, 58 57, 56,
Right.
seconds, right? It starts counting down. And it's like, hey, if you're planning on doing something with your car, you ought to like do this right now. Or you're about to buy a car that's this many days away from needing this maintenance. So you need to put that into the value in your calculus of the value of the car.
Yeah, so get this, like on the report, the vehicle history report, you can actually get a well-maintained badge. Seriously. But what I pointed out to them was it's a long road to travel from where you are now to the well-maintained badge. It's like, how do you incrementally get there? So there's all this, I don't know how to explain it, but anyway, there's a lot of excitement without even me saying gamification. Like it's permeating throughout the culture,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I agree with you. Um, I absolutely agree with you. Do you find just kind of one quick question for you before I let you go? So do you find
Yeah.
inside your organization that you find that there's resistance to the idea of gamification inside your group?
I don't see any resistance. Um, Obviously, there's the, okay, well, what does gamification mean because of the word, right, and all that jazz. But once you explain, okay, well, it's about motivation, it's about engagement, people are like, oh yeah, of course we're gonna go for that. And then it's like, oh, okay, so gamification is a name that people can gravitate around to apply these good things like behavioral economics and da 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 da. So they get it once it's explained.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Michael. Nice to see you in person again. Thanks for
Yeah, it's great
joining
to
us.
see you. All right.
Um, in the meantime, there's been a kind of interesting there's been an interesting sort of side chat about logins and registration. And one of the things that I think one of the education elements that I think you'll definitely get from joining us at G Summit is looking at the case studies of how other people have handled important details like registration. We spend a bunch of time when we do the workshops. We spend a bunch of time talking about the onboarding process. I think the onboarding process is very, very important. It's something that, as you see today, as we were talking with Michael today on the here on the show. Um, uh, as you saw, we were talking about it today. Onboarding is a core element of the experience in gamification. It's core to the design. We don't cut corners on it. We really think about that a lot. Really, really well-designed games, spend an inordinate amount of time and energy focused on that first minute of the user's experience. I think the idea of throwing up a simple tutorial is nice if that simple tutorial, explains everything that users want to do. But sometimes you have to design something that's more complicated, and that means that you actually will have to put in some effort on how that actually works and how that thing needs to be designed. So what I want to encourage you to do is think about the basic gamification onboarding model. Okay, so how that works is offer something of value, then take some registration, congratulate the user for having achieved that thing, give them another challenge, make sure they've got a series of challenges to kind of pass through over time so that they get what they need. And if you join us, if you happen to have the opportunity to join us at G Summit this particular round where we're traveling all around the world for G Summit Global, you'll have the opportunity to talk with me about that, work on onboarding in the workshop, see the videos of folks who've talked about that, look at their projects in detail and see how you can apply those things to whatever the challenges that you happen to be particularly following up on in your life. And we've had also a very spirited discussion about using Facebook login. And I'll just say from my perspective, I think being able to use third-party login systems like Facebook is actually really powerful. Just make sure that if you are offering that to people, there's no chance for them to get confused. One of the most frustrating things is if you have a Facebook login option and a regular registration option, and the user forgets which one that actually is, then you actually have an issue where users get frustrated and annoyed, where they come back and try to figure out why they can't log in. They reset their password. I'm sure you guys have all been through this experience before. You've all seen it in your own life. It's like, oh my God, what is going on? This is my usual login and password. So remember that you can create frustration. You're actually going to lose people through that process and create customer confusion and frustration, which isn't good. So we're at the end of our time for today. I want to thank you all for joining us here on the Gamification Revolution. Hopefully we'll have Jeff back soon. We have another exciting guest for you next week, Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. In the meantime, be sure to check out gsummit.com. Join us for the live workshops. Check out gamification.co for more information about gamification and everything that you need to know to get started in our database of examples. Thanks to everybody who's with us every week, whether you're live or remote. Love the conversation. Hope to see you back here again soon, a week from now, on the Gamification Revolution. I'm your host, Gabe Zichermann. My Twitter handle is @gzicherm. See you soon. In the meantime, everyone, keep having fun.